All right, let's do it. We're diving deep into the world of E.C. Segar, the man behind the one and only Popeye.
Oh, yeah, Popeye.
We've got articles, Wikipedia entries, even a YouTube video about how Popeye changed over time.
Hmm, interesting.
Have you ever thought about how a sailor with one eye became so famous?
It really is something, isn't it?
We're going to find out how it happened.
It's quite a story, lots of twists and turns,
Yeah.
just like the adventures in Segar's comics, really.
You know, it's kind of crazy to think that before Popeye, Segar was a drummer
Oh,
and a film projectionist, too. That's a pretty interesting background, right?
definitely. Those jobs, they need you to understand timing, visuals, and how to connect with people.
Yeah,
All
yeah.
super important for making cartoons, you know?
It makes total sense when you put it like that. So Segar was born in 1894 in Chester, Illinois,
Okay,
a small town right on the Mississippi River.
I see.
You can almost picture him there, soaking up all the characters and stories that would later make him famous.
That's what makes Segar's work so great, I think. It's all about everyday life.
Yeah.
He took people he knew and made them into these awesome characters.
Before Popeye came along, Segar was doing other comics, like Charlie Chaplin's Comic Capers
Right.
and Looping the Loop. Remember that one? The panels were all vertical.
Oh, wow, that's unusual.
Can you imagine reading that in the newspaper?
That was pretty daring, wasn't it? Breaking away from the way things were usually done.
Definitely.
It shows he wasn't afraid to experiment, even back then.
Yeah. All that creativity got him noticed by King Features Syndicate in New York. He hit the big time.
Wow.
Then, in 1919, Segar created Thimble Theatre.
Thimble Theatre.
But here's the thing. The main characters weren't who you'd expect.
Oh, really? Who was it?
It was Olive Oil, her brother Castor Oil, and this guy named Ham Gravy.
No Popeye.
Nope, Popeye didn't show up for another 10 years.
Wow, so those early Thimble Theatre strips, they must have been totally different.
They were. And this is where Segar started to change things up. He began writing longer stories that continued week after week.
Oh, serialized stories.
Exactly. That was pretty new for comic strips back then.
It was.
It was like he was a pioneer, taking readers on these big adventures. He took them to Africa, the Wild West, everywhere. So different from those one-panel jokes that were common back then.
Yeah.
He was really pushing the limits, trying new ways to get readers hooked.
And those early stories set the stage for all the great stuff that would come later in Thimble Theatre, even after Popeye arrived.
That's really cool. Now, speaking of Popeye, when he showed up in 1929, everything changed. But get this. He was only supposed to be in one strip.
Really?
Yeah. Segar just needed a tough guy to help the Oil family get to a casino on Dice Island. And
Oh,
boom, Popeye became a huge hit.
that's incredible.
What's really neat is that even in that first appearance, you see so much of Popeye's personality. Do you remember his first line?
Not really.
Do you think I'm a cowboy?
Oh, right. It's so Popeye.
It's perfect, right? That mix of tough talk and here that made him famous.
Yeah.
It's amazing how small choices can have such a big impact. So readers loved Popeye and wanted more.
Of course.
Segar really created something special with him. That never give up attitude, always loyal, and a heart of gold under that rough exterior.
He was a true underdog.
And all those core traits were there from the start. Segar really knew how to make characters people would love.
Yeah, he did. But it wasn't just the character, you know.
Right.
There's also those longer stories that he'd started doing before. People were hooked every week wanting to see what crazy stuff Popeye would do next.
So we've got this quirky family, these amazing adventures, and then bam, this one-eyed sailor comes out of nowhere and steals the show.
What a story.
I can't wait to talk about how Popeye's success changed Segar and Thimble Theatre.
Oh, there's a lot to talk about there.
Yeah.
Popeye's rise to fame changed comics forever. But I think that's a story for next time.
Okay, so Popeye's this global star. But what was Segar doing? Did he ever try anything besides comic strips?
He did, actually.
Yeah.
Segar wanted to write a whole novel about Popeye.
A novel? Really?
Yeah. It would have been about Popeye and the Sea Hag.
Wow, I would have loved to read that. What happened?
Well, King Features, the company that owned the rights to Popeye,
Yeah.
they said no. They didn't want him to do it.
Oh, man. That's tough.
Yeah. They saw how popular Popeye was and wanted to keep control.
Makes sense, I guess. But still, it's a shame. We could have learned so much more about Popeye from a novel.
It's true. Makes you think about all the stories that never get told.
Right. Okay, so even with that setback, Popeye just keeps getting more and more famous.
Oh, yeah.
He was in over 500 newspapers. Then in 1933, they made that deal with Fleischer Studios for the cartoons.
The cartoons.
That must have been huge for Popeye.
It was. Those early cartoons really brought Popeye to life in a whole new way.
Yeah, yeah.
They kept the energy and humor of the comics.
Right.
But they also added all this action and, slapstick comedy.
That's so true. It's amazing how different mediums can change things up while still staying true to the original.
Right. And speaking of change, Segar wasn't afraid to bring new characters into Thimble Theatre.
Oh, yeah, he added a lot of great ones.
Bluto, Sweet Pea.
Eugene the Jeep.
Exactly. It made the stories even better, don't you think?
Definitely. It's like Segar had an endless supply of ideas. One thing that always makes me wonder, though, is the whole spinach thing.
Oh, yeah.
I mean, it's like the thing about Popeye.
It is.
But wasn't it not always about spinach? I mean, he was strong before, right?
You're right. You're right. Spinach wasn't the only thing that made Popeye strong.
Okay, good. I thought so.
He used his smarts, his determination, and sometimes even just plain luck.
So then how did spinach become such a big deal in the cartoons?
Well, for one thing, it was just easier for the animators.
How so?
Popeye eats some spinach, puffs on his pipe, boom, instant strength.
Ah, okay.
It was a quick and fun way to show how powerful he was.
But there must have been more to it than just that.
Yeah, you're right. Remember, this was the 1930s, and people were really starting to pay attention to food and health.
Oh, right.
Especially during the Depression,
Yeah,
A lot of families couldn't afford to eat well,
I see.
and spinach was cheap and full of vitamins, so they said it was a superfood.
So Popeye sort of accidentally became, like, a spokesperson for healthy eating.
Exactly. He made kids want to eat their spinach to be strong like him.
That's so wild. So these creative choices, they can be influenced by what's happening in the world at the time, huh?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
It just goes to show you that even the most famous characters reflect the times they were created in.
It's so cool how all these pieces fit together. Thimble Theatre really changed from those early gags to these big, complex adventures.
Well, yeah.
With a whole cast of characters you'll never forget. Segar really pushed the limits of what comics could be.
He did. And that's a huge part of why he's so important. He showed that comics could tell deep stories.
Yeah.
And they could have characters that grow and change.
It's really inspiring to think about how much one person can change a whole art form. But what about Segar himself? What was he like as a person?
From what people said, he was a really kind and funny guy.
That's great.
He loved interacting with his readers.
Oh, really?
Yeah, he'd even put their ideas into the strip sometimes.
That's so cool. Sounds like he didn't let fame go to his head.
He stayed true to himself. He was known for helping other artists and giving to charity secretly.
What a great guy. And he never forgot where he came from, right?
Nope. Chester's super proud of him, They have statues of Popeye, festivals, even a whole museum for spinach can collectibles.
It's amazing how much his work means to people, even today. But it's so sad that Segar died so young, in 1938.
It was. Only 43 years old.
And from leukemia, right?
Yeah, leukemia.
Such a loss for the world of comics. They tried to keep Thimble Theatre going with other artists.
They did.
But it just wasn't the same. It lost that special Segar touch.
It's hard to replace someone like that.
Yeah, he put so much of himself into his work. It makes you wonder about all the stories we'll never get to read because he died so young.
That's true. It's a reminder that we should appreciate the artists we have while they're still creating.
Definitely. But even though his life was cut short, Segar's impact is still huge.
Oh, absolutely.
Popeye is still this global icon, a symbol of strength and doing the right thing.
He's an inspiration.
As we've been talking about Segar's life, I keep thinking about that novel he wanted to write, the one King Features wouldn't let him do.
Yeah.
It makes you wonder about all the creative things that get stopped because of business.
That's a good point. Trying to be creative and successful at the same time. It's a struggle.
And who knows how many amazing things we miss out on because they just don't fit into the market or whatever.
It's a good reminder that the things we see and read, they're not always just about talent and hard work.
Right.
There are other forces at play, too. Sometimes people with power decide what gets seen and what doesn't.
That's kind of a heavy thought. But it also makes you want to support the artists who try to do things differently.
Exactly. Because you never know. Maybe that project that seems weird or risky.
Yeah.
Maybe that's the one that's going to become the next big thing.
Like the next Popeye.
Exactly. The next thing that everyone loves and remembers.
Well said. I think this is a good place to pause for now. But don't worry, we'll be back soon to wrap up our deep dive into E.C. Segar and the legacy of Popeye.
Ah,
We've gone through Segar's whole life, from a small town to creating one of the most famous comic strips ever.
it's pretty amazing.
But I keep wondering, what is it about Popeye that makes him so popular even now?
That's a great question. It's almost 100 years later, and he's still a global icon.
Exactly.
Well, I think it's a bunch of things, honestly. Segar really tapped into something that everyone could connect with,
Like what makes him so timeless?
Oh, just look at him.
Yeah.
He's instantly recognizable. The squinty eye, the huge forearms, that pipe always in his mouth. It's unique.
It really is. And you can't forget those lines, I am what I am, and, well, blow me down.
Oh, yeah, classic Popeye. Segar was so good at those little sayings that get stuck in your head.
He was, but I think there's more to Popeye than just his look and what he says.
Oh, for sure. It's who he is deep down.
Yeah.
His values,
Right. He might seem tough, but he's a good guy. He always fights for what's right, even if he gets beat up for it.
He's the classic underdog, always standing up for a little guy.
And even though he's this tough sailor, he shows his emotions, he loves olive oil.
Protects Sweepy.
He's a real person with good and bad.
And he's got this funny way of looking at things.
He never takes himself too seriously, does he?
Nope. He finds a way to laugh no matter what's happening.
I think that's why so many people relate to him.
Segar knew how important humor was, not just to make people laugh, but to help them through tough times, too.
Yeah, Popeye's humor comes from this deep understanding of, just being human, the weirdness of it all.
It's what makes him timeless. He's
Yeah.
like, it's okay to be different, be yourself.
Embrace those quirks. Face the world with some toughness, but don't forget to laugh.
He's a symbol of never giving up.
Yeah.
He's got that human spirit to get through anything.
It's a great message, especially for kids. You don't have to be perfect to be a hero.
Yeah, you can mess up, lose your temper, and still come out on top.
It's about what's inside, your values, how much you're willing to fight for what you believe in,
And Popeye does it all with a smile.
and a can-do attitude. No wonder people still love him so much.
His legacy is huge. It's not just the comic strips.
Right.
He's been in cartoons, movies, video games, everything.
It's amazing to think about how one guy, E.C. Segar, made this character that's had such a big impact on the world.
That's the power of a great story. It goes beyond where it started and becomes something bigger.
Something that people from all over, from different times, can understand and love.
Well, I think we've really gotten to know E.C. Segar.
The man who brought us Popeye and all those other amazing characters. We've seen his whole journey.
From his humble beginnings to his incredible success.
And how his work still matters today.
His creative process, the way Popeye evolved over time, and how it all changed comics forever.
I hope you've enjoyed listening to us dig deep into this.
And if you want to see Segar's work for yourself, definitely check out those early Thimble Theatre strips.
Oh, yeah, those are great.
You'll find all these crazy characters and wild adventures, and you'll see that Segar wit,
The thing that made him such a fantastic storyteller.
It's a real treat.
It is. And who knows? Maybe exploring Segar's world will make you want to create something too.
Your own stories, characters that will make people think and feel.
Until next time, keep exploring, keep learning, and keep that creative spark alive.